Willyum by Richard Marsh. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Lars Rolander. Willyum by Richard Marsh. I had been seated in the next chair to hers for at least 2 minutes. I felt that it was time to introduce myself. "It's a fine evening." She turned, she looked me up and down, then she looked straight in front of her again. "I don't know you." But I was not to be crushed. There was something about the shape of her that which suggested sociability. "That is my misfortune rather than my fault." "I don't know nothing at all about that. I do not speak to strangers as a rule. Sometimes there's never no knowing who they are." I felt that I was getting on, so I went on. "What do you think of the band?" "It's not loud enough for me. I like a band as I can hear." One suspected there might be occasions on which one could almost like a band which one could not hear, but I did not say so. That broke the ice, and the conversation drifting on to personal topics, she explained to me that she had a young man who, so to speak, was resting, owing to what she called a difference which she had had with him. It struck me that the tale, as she told it, contained elements of tragedy. "Bakers," she observed, "is what I like. I have a sister who likes butchers. To me there's always the smell of the meat about a butcher. But it's as you're made. The worst of bakers is they're such a thirsty lot." "Possibly," I suggested, "that is in a measure owing to the nature of their occupation." "That may be, but still there's a limit, and when a man is always drinking, I think it's time for him to stop." I thought so too, but she went on. "My young man, his name is William Evans, is a baker, and him and me have been walking out together for years come next month. So I said to him, 'William, it's my day out Tuesday. I shall expect you to take me somewhere.' So he said, 'I will.' So I said, 'Hyde Park Corner 10:30. I was there as the clock was striking, and a fine scuffle I had to get there too. And if you'll believe me, he kept me waiting 2 hours and 3/4 by the clock what's over the gatekeeper's lodge, which is longer than any gentleman ought to keep a lady waiting, I don't care who he is. So when he did come, I was a bit huffy. So I said, 'Well, William, I hope I've put you to no hurry, and it's a pity you should have troubled yourself to come at this time of day, seeing as how I'm just off home.' So he said, and he wiped his lips, and I could see he had had a moistener, if not more. 'It's like this. I accidentally had an appointment which was of the nature of business, and which I couldn't help, and that's how it is I'm a little behind.' 'I see,' I said. 'And it had something to do with pine pots, I have no doubt.' So he sat down on a seat which was wet owing to there being a drizzle on, and as it seemed silly for me to stand whilst he was sitting, I sat down likewise. So there we sat, neither of us saying nothing, till I began to feel a little damp, because I had my thin things on, and it was beginning to come down heavy. So I said, 'Well, William, have you forgotten it's my day out? I thought you was going to take me somewhere.' He said, 'So I am.' So I said, 'Where are you going to take me to? It's getting on, and I'm likewise getting wet,' which I was. So he said, 'What do you say to Battersea Park?' So I said, 'I say nothing. And the idea, William, of your talking about taking me to Battersea Park, when, as you very well know, it is raining cats and dogs, is not what I expected, because, as he could very well see, I only had a parasol, which was red, and the rain was coming through, and the colour coming out. But he didn't care for the rain no more than nothing, because, as I tell you, he being a baker, to him it was a kind of a change.' You must know that William is that near about money that I never saw nothing like him. Not that it's a bad thing in a man, though it may be carried too far, and I must say I do think William do carry it too far. He has never given me nothing which he didn't want me to pay for, not even half a pint of beer, so I was not surprised when he said, "The fact is, Matilda," which is me, "I haven't got no money." "Well," I said, "that's a nice thing, to promise to take me out, and then to have no money." So he said, "If you was to pay the expenses for both the two of us, it might make things more pleasant." So I said, "No, I thank you," because I had been had that way before, and more than once. So I got up and said, "Well, William, I will now wish you a good day, because I have been here since 10:30, and it is now past 2, and my clothes is sticking to me, and I don't care to stop no longer." So he said, "Now, Matilda, don't you get disagreeable," which I was beginning to feel it, and so I own. "We are both of us having a day out," he said, "and don't let no bad temper spoil our pleasure. I may have some money somewhere, unbeknown to myself, so I will look and see, though I must say I do think it hard that all the expenses should be borne by me." So he begins feeling in his pockets, and presently he gives a kind of start, and he brings out 1/2 crown. "There," he said, "is 1/2 crown, and if you put 5 shillings to it, it will make 7 and 6." "No," I said, "I shall put no 5 shillings of mine to no 1/2 crown of yours, and so the least said, the soonest mended, and if you don't mind, I will go and get myself something to eat, being hungry and having, I am thankful to say, money of my own with which to pay for it." Then he gives another kind of start, and he says, "There, if I didn't make a pasty for you last night with my own hands, and I've been sitting on it all the time," which he had, and anything like the mess he'd made of it you never saw. He held it out to me. "No," I said, "I thank you. I'm particular about my victuals, and I never eat no scraps, and still less things that have been sat down upon." "Well," he said, "it's a pity it should be wasted. I'll eat it myself." Which he did, and me standing in the rain there looking on. That did put my back up. "Mr. Evans," I said, short and sharp, "I wish you a good day. I am going." So I goes, and he comes running after me, picking at the bits of pasty what was stuck to the paper. I must say this for Willyum, that it takes a deal to get his temper up. So I pulls up. "Now let us understand each other, Willyum, if you please. Are you going to pay for something for me to eat, or are you not?" He gives himself a kind of a shake so as to get his courage up, and he says, "You shall have anything you like to eat at my expense, Matilda, so long as the cost does not exceed—" Then he hesitated. "Ninepence." Then he gave himself another kind of shake, which I took as a sign that his courage was running down, for both the two of us. That made me fairly wild, it really did. To think that he had promised to take me somewhere, and that I had been more than 3 hours there in the rain, and got wet through, and my things all spoiled, which it was a new dress I had on, what I had got special for the occasion, and it had only come home from the dressmaker's the day before, and the colour was coming out of my parasol, which was likewise new, and my hair all coming out of curl, and me feeling as limp as a rag, and starving hungry, and that he should want to put me off with fourpence halfpenny worth of food, drawn from him as if it were his eye tooth. It did make me feel really wild. I never said a word to him, but I walks right out of the park, he comes running after me, and he catches hold of my arm, and he says, 'Now, Matilda, what did I say just now about letting no bad temper spoil our pleasure?' I said, 'I don't know what your idea of pleasure is, but it isn't mine, and as I don't want to have no more to do with you, Mr. Evans, perhaps you will be so kind as to let me go.' But he holds on to me all the tighter, and he says, 'I'll tell you what, Matilda, a idea has just come into my head. My brother, as you've heard me talk about, lives close by here. We will go and dine with him. He being a married man and with a comfortable home, he will be glad to see us.' Well, I didn't know what to do, not liking to have no quarrel with him in the street, so off we starts for his brother's. He took me to a mews what led out of Park Lane, and as we was turning the corner he said, 'There's only this one thing about my brother. Him and me has had a little difference of opinion, and he's not of a forgiving disposition.' So I said, 'Now, William, what do you mean by that?' So he said, 'Number 32 on the other side is where he lives, and if you was to go on and knock at the door and ask for Mrs. Henry Evans, what is my brother's wife, so to speak, it might smooth the way.' So I said, 'I do not understand you. Just now you was saying as how your brother would be glad to see us. Are you now insinuating otherwise?' He catches a glimpse of my eye, and he sees the kind of mood I was in, and he plucks up, and he walks on, and he says, 'We will hope for the best. Do not let us spoil our day's pleasure by no disagreeable observations. There is never no knowing what might happen.' All of a sudden he cries out, 'There is my brother. Now, Matilda, don't you let him start hitting me.' And he jumps behind me, so as to get into the shadow, as it were. So I says, 'William, whatever is the matter now? Your conduct does seem to me to be of the most extraordinary character.' And there was a great big giant of a man on the other side of the road, washing a carriage with a bucket of water and I don't know what. And as I moves on one side he catches sight of William, and anything like the way in which he started swearing you never heard. 'Hullo!' he says. 'There's that putty-faced brother of mine. I've been looking for you for some time. Here's something for you, William.' And before I had no idea what he was going to do, he catches up the bucket of water and he throws it over William, and some of it went over me. Oh, dear me, you never saw nothing like the mess that I was in. And he grabs hold of William by the collar and he says, 'Hang me if I don't wipe down the street with you.' And he shouts out, 'Henrietta, here's brother William. Haven't you got anything for him?' You bet your life he's come for something." And a window opens over the way, and a woman puts her head out, and she empties something out of a pail over William, and again some of it went over me. Oh dear, dear. And that giant of a man, he set about William something cruel, and all the mews was in a uproar, and I hurried away as hard as I ever could. I was that frightened, and I got into a cab just as I was, and you should have seen how the cabman stared, and drove right away to a sister of mine what lives at Camberwell, and I nearly cried my eyes out, and I've never spoken to William nor set eyes on him since then, which is a fortnight the day after tomorrow. And if you had been in my place, and had been treated as I was, would you have let things go on as usual, just if there hadn't been no difference?" "No," I said, "I should not. I should have insisted on their going on in quite a different kind of way." And so I told her. End of Willium by Richard Marsh. Read by Lars Rolander.